ねえ君、この辺りに扉はない？
扉って言ってたよね。まさかまさか。
What's up, manga heads? This is Dark Fox. I'm here with ARG Bombshell, and we're here to talk about Suzume, the new film by Makoto Shinkai. ARG Bombshell is a huge Makoto Shinkai fan. I enjoy his films, but I'm not the biggest fans. I think they're really well made and pretty fun movies. But new one's out, so we gotta go check it out and see what it's like.
Opening night, we had to go.
That's true, yeah. I had a couple options of how to see this movie amongst friends, and I was seeing if I could get Amber to come with another group of another friend group, and she was like, nope, because that's 3 days later. That's 3 days later from the opening. So
he's like, oh, you want to see it on the 16th? And I'm like, no, we're going the 13th, the day before the official opening. We have to see it first chance we got.
So
and in sub.
So I guess F my friends, I guess. But Amber and I are ride or die with anime movies, so.
I mean, it's like every 3 years there's a Shinkai movie. I'll go see a different movie with your friends, but Shinkai opening night.
Yeah. So this film, if you don't know anything about it, is basically about a young woman named Suzume. She's in high school, I believe, right?
Junior year
High school. And she comes across basically I'm just going to say it very bluntly and very quickly. We're going to get into more details later. But basically she comes across a gate to another dimension that unleashes catastrophes, and usually in the form of earthquakes. This is one of those films that has real life catastrophes and natural disasters that has a science fiction or fantasy explanation for it within the lore of the movie. And it's handled pretty interestingly, and obviously there's a lot of gravitas in Japan, because the movie takes place in Japan, as you might expect. Yeah. There's a lot of it's very serious subject matter, earthquakes in Japan. So the stakes are very high in the movie. But the film mostly revolves around kind of like a road trip style vibe, where Suzume.
It's all over Japan. It starts in Kyushu, and then it goes to Ehime.
Yeah.
And then there's one more stop before Tokyo, and then they go. There was one more stop after that as well.
And then they go to Russia.
No, they don't go to Russia.
And then from Russia,
they
go to
cross
Ohio.
The ocean.
And then it gets crazy in Ohio. Let me tell you. Just the other day in Ohio, they're fighting fighter jets.
They go to a lot of different. It's at least 5 different spots within the entire country.
Yeah. And part of her discovery of this supernatural world is Sota. Who you discover he's basically what they call a closer, and it's something that's passed down in his family, and it's not really described too much. We don't know if there's other family of closers or if just one family, the whole entire world that does this. But they basically find these gates and they close them so they could keep the catastrophe behind it, and basically kind of delay the destruction.
Yeah. And just to quick interrupt, for age reference, since we said that Suzume is a junior in high school, Sota is a senior in college. So. What? That's important information.
It is. And he's going to jail. No, I'm kidding.
No.
That is kind of the main love interest of the movie, but this movie is a little lighter on the love compared to Weather With You and Your Name.
Yes.
In a good way, I feel, because it's definitely a part of the movie.
But it's not the focus.
No. The focus is on Suzume and kind of her past, and also just kind of Japan and the Japanese people, kind of.
Yes, but that's also a good point to make a quick note for when we do get into more spoilery stuff. Yeah. That there is a trigger warning, at least for the sake of trauma. because a lot of this movie is about Suzume overcoming her trauma that she's had to live with through her life. And so while there is romance in it, like a typical Shinkai movie, it's not the plot. It's more of a subtle nod that isn't focused on directly. Like, you can tell it's there, but it's not the object.
And I would say, I hope this isn't giving too much away. The love story in the more recent Makoto Shinkai films have a real big element of loss, like bittersweetness, where like maybe they end up together, but they lose something because of it, or maybe there's consequences for them being together. This one, the bittersweet aspect, the aspect of lost, isn't hinged around the boy and the girl.
Yes.
It's hinged around Suzume and her relationship with her family and kind of her past, which I thought was interesting. There's only so much time you could have this bittersweet love story about this boy and a girl.
Yes.
I don't want to say it's deeper, because of course like a love story can be deep, but it did feel kind of like more interesting. Maybe because he's done it so many times and he did something slightly different.
Yeah. I left feeling very satisfied with this movie.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the Shinkai works, especially some of the earlier ones, like where there's a love story, and even in Your Name, until we get Weathering With You, it's not clear that they end up together. But like obviously we know in Weathering With You that they did. But it's very often that you don't see them physically like end up together until Weathering With You. And in this movie, I don't want to give too much away yet. So it's similar but different in that aspect, but I'm satisfied.
To be clear, this is a Makoto Shinkai film.
Yes.
It is very much the same kind of film. I don't mean that as super harsh criticism, but I do mean that as like a warning to like, if you've seen the movies and you're kind of over them, I mean, this might not be for you, but I do still recommend it. Like I said, it's really good. It's really high quality. But it's like the formula is still essentially the same, where like boy, girl, kind of a supernatural or science fiction element kind of on top of it.
Save the world.
Yeah. And then...
Or at least Japan.
Yeah, like save something important, right? Like
yes.
an actual catastrophe in Your Name Was a Town, right? That was
yes.
going to get hit by the meteor. And here the stakes are actually a fair bit bigger than that. But you have that, and then you kind of have that bittersweet kind of ending that kind of, it feels a little mature. It feels a little like it's not just a happy ending. There's more complication to it.
And typical to all Shinkai films, you can absolutely expect to see these gorgeous landscapes and very realistic moments throughout as well. And of course, like in Weathering With You, McDonald's ad placement.
Yeah, that's like, though I wasn't actually paying that much attention. That's like real McDonald's, not like whack Donald's.
Straight up McDonald's, like they had
McDonald's.
all the food there.
Okay.
It even had like on her bank statement, it even had like McD on there. McDonald's got Makoto Shinkai's number. Oh, and a wonderful Radwimp soundtrack, also to be expected.
Yeah, I was talking to Amber before we started filming, and I was saying that actually I did not feel Radwim's presence in this film that strongly, and I consider that a good thing. I got nothing against Radwimp. Please do not kill me. But it's just kind of like, especially Your Name. Your Name was so heavy.
Heavy on Radwimp, yeah.
There's so many scenes in Your Name where it's like, oh my gosh, something's happening. Quiet. Oh, right. You just Radwimp song starts playing, and
yes.
it happens like 3 times in that film, where it's just like this really kind of like poignant like set piece, and then everything is hinged on that music.
And like credit breaks with songs like mid-movie on that one as well.
Yeah, he really chilled on that shit, and I'm glad he did. But apparently Amber, she looked it up, and like they're involved with almost all the music in this movie. It just doesn't sound like typical Radwimp stuff. Yeah,
it's a lot more like the background music than the vocals like you expected in Your Name and Weathering With You. But they are still responsible for most of the music. And then there is another person on the soundtrack as well. And then a featured vocalist, which is the main song that everybody's hyping up. And that I couldn't stop singing.
Is that the doo-doo?
Yes. I mean, that song's just called Suzume. You're rushing your dues there.
I mean, I got literally zero musical prowess, but even I can sing that song. So really, how good can she be? I mean, come on. Yeah. So like one thing we kind of skipped over is we talked about Suzume and Sota, but and this is in the trailer, so I don't think this is too bad to spoil. There's kind of like a mascot character twist to the film where Sota gets pushed or like force possessed into a chair.
Cursed.
Yeah, cursed, where like he becomes this chair, and the chair is like a little wooden chair for preschoolers, so it's really small, and it's colored like bright yellow or red.
Yeah, it was yellow,
Yeah.
and it has like 2 little eyes carved into it, and it's 3-legged.
Yeah, it's 3-legged because it's actually like a memento, and this is a big part of the film. It's an old chair, but Suzume holds on to it for sentimental reasons, and the person who curses him is
Daijin.
Daijin. Daijin is a pretty cool cat in the movie.
Pretty cool. I mean, he's pretty cute. Like, I'll give you that.
You know, Daijin. He gets up to some stuff. I assume it's a he. I don't know. He or she gets up to.
I think they referred to him as a he throughout the movie.
Yeah, he gets up to stuff. He's definitely kind of like a mischievous character archetype.
Very much a trickster.
Yeah, trickster. Kind of like a selfish, self-absorbed, but like as the movie goes on, you could kind of see that they do have a motivation and they do have like reasons or
No spoilies yet.
no spoiling, but like the cat is kind of almost introduced like the villain or like the MacGuffin they're trying to get, and more is kind of explained, but they're like a big part of like the lore of these gates that they're finding, and without the cat, basically like destruction is guaranteed, basically. So they need the cat. One interesting thing about the film, and again, I don't think there's too much spoiling. The gates are usually doors, and usually in ruins, is what the movie called it. But it's always like urban decay.
Yeah.
It's always like either an abandoned amusement park, or an abandoned town, a city block, something that's
a
like
town that had already
dilapidated.
been destroyed by some sort of disaster, or just like something. Oh, actually, there's a middle school where a landslide happened, and it was so destroyed that they just left that area.
Yeah, so I don't know if there's a deliberate commentary there about because essentially this is where the source of earthquakes and very natural disasters is happening, from urban decay. So I don't know if there is some sort of commentary about like where we turn the blind eye in our development, and we allow our own the human structures to decay and destruct. That is where we're recording disaster or something like that. But there seems to be a purpose behind it, because it isn't just like any door; it could be anywhere. It's not like it's not like the set piece in the movie where like, oh my god, I gotta sneak into the girls' bathroom because because the gate's in here. It's always off into like the woods where stuff is all messed up and weird, and it's definitely intentional, but I'm not exactly sure why.
Actually, you just reminded me with your girls' bathroom comment or whatever.
Yeah.
Unlike your name, little to no pervy moments in Suzume.
Yeah, there's nothing.
I think it was rated PG as well, so it was very, very tame movie actually, other than the trauma.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything like overtly sexual besides like
Nope.
the hot lounge singer mom.
I mean, that wasn't really sexual to an extent. It was just like she's doing her job.
Yeah, we'll talk more about the characters in the spoiler flip, but
Yes.
one of the characters she meets is Rumi. And she's like a mom, and then it turns out that she's like a bar owner or something like that. And again,
Bar Harbor.
sorry.
Her bar is Bar Harbor.
Oh. And again, like the Japanese and Japanese people is kind of like a big part of this movie, because her bar, it kind of feels like it's not like a super upscale bar. It's like a bar with all the old people in the community go.
It's definitely a dive.
Yeah, because they got they're retired, they got nowhere else to be, so they go to the bar and they sing karaoke with all their old friends. But it's also not like a super. I mean, it is charming, and it is kind of quaint. But it's not like a scene in a Miyazaki movie where like you have these super charismatic and funny old guy characters. It's kind of low key.
Yeah.
It's just like
You're just drinking.
yeah,
Time.
it's just like oh, it's like these old people and she's there like singing with them and entertaining them. And there's a lot of interesting characterizations like that. A big focus on I don't know if there's any negative aspect you could draw from this as it. I really don't see it as anything like political, as far as like Japanese politics or anything like that. But there's very much a through line about like Japanese people, average Japanese people, and their daily lives, and how tragic it can be when it's disrupted by natural disasters and stuff like that, and maybe stuff that we can even avoid. I'll tell you what. I think I was aware of this, but it's pretty spooky. The fact that everybody has like Amber Alerts for earthquakes in Japan.
I thought that was really convenient.
But it's very traumatic.
Yeah,
because it's not like you can do anything. The warning is literally like 2-second warning, and then the earthquake happens.
It's like so in the movie. There's these really loud alerts, kind of like an Amber Alert that goes off on our phones here, that warns them of an earthquake. And so you have like 1 to 2 seconds to take cover.
Yeah.
For context. So I mean, I think those are like really helpful. One, for the sake of Suzume's mission throughout the movie.
Yes, it's a good plot device.
Yeah, like you know what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And then two, like just real world applicability. I can't use words today. If that is like an actual thing that they use there, I didn't look it up. That seems like really useful.
I feel like it is, and I feel like I already knew about this and I forgot about this. It's you know you have those feelings where like, oh yeah, this is like
that somewhere.
This is like new information that I feel like I know about. But like I've lived in Chile, which is also an earthquake country, and they didn't. Granted, I lived in Chile like 2009-ish, 2010-ish, so like not flip phone. I mean, there were still flip phones. Cell phone technology wasn't super prevalent, or touch phone, excuse me. And I mean, I guess the cell phone I had was a pay by minutes plan, so maybe it wouldn't even have these kind of features. But like I don't. I feel like Chile should have that too. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, they might now. I feel like it's something that's definitely like a natural disaster response thing that has like evolved into cell phone use. That now that it's just such a globalized presence for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not everyone, but most countries.
In conclusion, earthquakes are spooky.
Yeah, they're terrifying. I don't want to be in one.
I was spared. I moved right soon after the big earthquake that happened 2008 or 2009. I don't remember when it was, but when I went to Chile, I was there for the first year anniversary of the big earthquake, and it was interesting talking to the people who were really affected by it. Like I stayed with my aunt. This is story time with Dark Fox right here.
Story time.
I stayed with my aunt, and my aunt had what do you call it when you have somebody renting one of your rooms? She had like
Sublet.
she had a tenant basically, and I was chilling outside because she had like a big courtyard thing, / driveway, and he came outside. It was the evening of the anniversary, and all day the TV was running memorial stuff and stories about the earthquake, and he came outside and it was like, you weren't here for the earthquake, were you? He was like, no, I wasn't here. No, like no, it was wild. And he was living there during the earthquake, and I could just see the way he was talking about it. That man was spooked. That man had some trauma, and like thankfully nothing happened to him. He literally just kind of like dug for cover and held out for the whatever minutes the earth shook on him. But he was talking about like, no, like he was pointing at the pillars, the stone pillars, the metal pipes, and like no, everything was moving like paper. And he was just like, and it came to the point where like I was at work, and I mentioned like basically I mentioned like a tsunami, and one of my coworkers told me is like, stop bringing that up, because you could freak somebody out.
Yeah.
Because somebody can have very fresh trauma about that, and it's just kind of like a wake up call. It's an obvious thing. I wasn't being very empathetic, but like it's an obvious thing. However, like the when that stuff is fresh in people's psyche, it's like it's just like poppable trauma. And then you cast that nationwide, and then it's just it becomes kind of part of the culture.
Well, do you know, as far as like I'm not sure for Chile, but I know like Japanese infrastructure, they have like a lot of different mechanisms in place in their buildings to deal with the mobility of earthquakes now.
There might be in Chile, somewhere.
It's been a while.
Not like Japan. I think Japan is a little ahead of the curve, or they had more money to spend on that. I think, because I've seen the floppy buildings that absorb all the vibrations. Turns out, if you're too rigid, that's not always a good thing in an earthquake, because it's you versus the earth, and the earth is gonna win. Yeah, the earth is gonna win basically, and having flexibility is actually a huge. We're not talking about anything new.
So,
this is common sense.
I know we went on a really long tangent here, but the point is, everyone, nature is scary, and it's a very big part of this movie.
And in this movie, it's a physical force that you gotta go stop.
Gotta stop nature.
I keep kind of getting derailed off of Sota, or Cherta, as I'm gonna call him.
Oh, cheers.
Took you 1 second for that one.
It did. It went right over my head.
I think they use CG models for the chair for most scenes, but they do a really good job with the chair for the expressiveness of the chair.
Yes.
And the animation, the way the chair like and starts running,
takes off, and leaps for days.
Yes. If you ever want to see like a foot chase between a cat and a chair.
Go.
And then the minor spoilers, scenes where the chair catches up to the cat and is like holding the cat down. And it's like, where is he? Like Batman interrogating the cat. Like it's an interesting scene. It's pretty entertaining.
So great. I laughed quite a few times throughout the movie. Just little chuckle moments like that.
I found this movie pretty joyful, and I found the movie more
there was only like one point where I felt like I was gonna cry, but that's very spoilery, so we'll get to that later.
But I found the movie more cathartic than the other films. I think part of Makoto Shinkai's appeal is that people really feel emotionally satisfied at the end of it.
Yeah.
And not that I didn't feel for the other films, but I guess maybe I saw the strings more. I was like, okay, he's pulling these heartstrings, or I saw the puppet master basically. Which is fine. Like you can enjoy a movie even if you see that.
Yeah.
But this one, like, it worked a lot better for me as far as like the build up and releases of emotion.
Yeah, like I was very satisfied with this one. Weathering with You, I was a little kind of let down about, but Your Name, the first time I watched that, I bawled my eyes out.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Did I say that I think this one's simpler than the other ones? Because I think it is.
Yeah.
This one isn't quite as dramatic, even though the stakes are extremely high sometimes. But compared to Your Name and the way they portray like the meteor stuff, it's really, really overwrought and really just kind of like palpable and heavy on you and stuff. And Weathering with You the same. You
don't feel as worried in Suzume that it's like not gonna work out. You definitely like feel like things will resolve the way you hope they will resolve for the most part.
Right. Yeah, so I think in combination with it being simpler, for one, kind of just like a little more straightforward, less trying to like surprise you and trick you with the Your Name stuff.
Come on, you don't want Freaky Friday Meets the Lake House?
No. Or I did when I watched Your Name, but I watched it already. So simpler, the boy-girl relationship being somewhat de-emphasized. Still there and still charming, but de-emphasized. Even though, watch out for that age gap. I don't like these college kids going after these high school girls, I'll tell you that.
They both seem very mature for their ages.
oh, he's a young 30 and she's an old 19.
He's not 30. I was like 22 when I graduated undergraduate. So that's like 4 or 5 year difference.
You're a big brain person, okay?
No, that's a normal like graduation time for undergrad. Yeah.
Okay.
So Soda's like 22. Suzume's 17. Okay, continue.
I don't know about that one. So simplicity, the love story being de-emphasized, and then kind of like just the catharsis of the emotional crescendo. That kind of puts this movie ahead of the other ones, in my opinion. I think this is my favorite Makoto Shinkai movie, and it's weird to say because it's not like I came out of the movie like, fuck yeah, this is the best movie ever. I high-fived ARG Bombshell.
I mean, we should have high-fived.
Yeah.
We should have been like all those people that clap in the movies for some reason when nobody can hear them. So.
Yeah. Oh,
that's right.
We should talk about our film or our theater experience.
That's right, our theater experience.
Okay. All right, homie, if you're out there, we're not trying to make fun of you, okay? Like, if you're actually listening to this, like,
sorry.
no hard feelings. It's just, it was kind of weird for us.
Yeah.
I don't think you're a creep or anything, but it was kind of weird for us.
Yeah, so we show up in this theater and we walk in, there's only one other person in the theater and he's sitting in our seats.
Yes.
I'm just like, what do we do?
And I felt like he wanted to fight him. I was like, no, let's just say here.
I wanted to. I'm like, this is my seat, bro.
No. I was like, because nobody was in the theater.
Yeah.
So
but it's the middle of the back row. Like, that's my seat.
So we sat one seat down from him. You know, that one seat separation.
That little gap.
Which turns out was too close to him.
It was too close.
He was to my right, Amber was to my left, so Amber was slightly further away from him, but I think he still picked up the BO.
I did.
Or the pop.
One of the two.
There's kind of
it kind of melded.
A little bit of Venn diagram
I'm
there.
so sorry, stranger.
And you could tell he kind of wanted to be our friends because he said a couple comments during the trailers.
Yeah, like he was trying to like connect with us as like fellow anime fans.
And I was just like, I pretend like, you know, like I pretend I didn't hear you.
Bro, it's cool.
I pretend I didn't hear you. Film started like 5 minutes into the film, very soon into the film, and he said, "Oh, bro, I bought the ticket for the dub. Am I in your seats, bro? I'm sorry, man. That's my bad. I'm sorry." And I was like, "That's cool. Like, you're all right. Don't worry about it."
I was like, "Yeah, you are." Like, I wanted to fight about these seats.
And then he stood up and he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna dip." I forget what he said. Did he say dip?
He did, but actually I forgot to say, I like, after we sat down and he was in our seats, I like went to the restroom, and while I was in there I like looked up on the phone like what seats were taken in the theater, and there was supposed to be like 2 other ones down in the front. And so I get back and I'm like, to Darfox, I'm just like, you know, there's only 2 other seats down in the front that are taken besides ours, like really loudly, and he still didn't like pick up on it.
Yeah, no, he picked up on it. He just got nervous, and he stood on that because he was like, "Oh, bro, am I in your seat? I'm sorry." And then you know, I'm dipping. All right, cool. I asked Amber because Amber bought my ticket, and I was like, "Was there a dub showing?" There wasn't. It was like 3 hours later.
Yeah, at like 10 o'clock at night.
So he was full of shit, and he showed me a receipt. It looked like a crumpled up like a gas station receipt or something.
How did he get in the back?
So I think he just walked in, which is cool with me, but like it was definitely bad luck for him choosing our seats.
I don't care that he was like going in there. I mean, I don't advocate not paying for your movies. You should pay for your movies. Makoto Shinkai needs your money.
Yeah,
but
yeah, he does.
it was just that he was in our seats that bugged me, man. Like, of all the seats in this empty theater.
It was a very small but funny encounter, and kind of weird and awkward.
And then like halfway through the movie, he popped back in for like 10 minutes and just sat in the front row right by the stairs.
Yeah, and he kind of waved at us like, "I'm gonna be down here, bro." He didn't say that, but that was kind of like the impression.
Waved, like, "Hey."
I was like, "Yeah, bro, I see you."
Welcome back, I guess.
And then after he came in, finally the people who actually bought the seats came in like a fair bit, like
at least like 20 minutes in.
Yeah. So that was our theater experience. Not the worst theater experience. I've had way worse theater experience.
Yeah, like when we saw, you know, the Demon Slayer not movie like a month ago.
What happened then? I don't remember.
We were in a completely full house of people just talking and singing through the whole thing.
Yes, and there was a Spanish couple.
Yes.
Yes.
Very loud.
There was Spanish couple to your left and one to my right.
Yeah, well, I didn't know who was on the side of you, but there was one to my
Oh,
right,
we
and she
didn't
was
sit-
like
did we not
singing
sit
loudly.
together?
We sat together, but like you were on my left,
Okay.
and
You got better memory
I
than
had
I do.
Spanish couple on my right, and she was singing Garango really loudly.
Banana, banana.
So
Um,
that was an experience itself.
I talked about it on the podcast, but it's kind of fun to see online anime fans' behavior in real life. It's bad and good. You know, it's fun, it's interesting, but it's also cringe to use that overused.
Sometimes
Um,
there's some great people too.
Just us.
People I meet at cons are great. You gotta go to cons.
If you say so. Last time I went to a con, I tore my ACL.
Okay, don't go to cons. I'll go to cons by myself.
Yeah, like I said, very very small snafu, but it was weird and fun, memorable. And the guy was like munching on something. I could smell.
It's a good thing that you were sitting next to him because I would have just like screamed at him if I heard him eating the whole time.
No, yeah. Like right before he left, he was just munching furiously on candy, and it was really flagrant. Like I could smell the sugar, like the sugar
my
candy.
gosh.
I don't know if he was like munching on gummies or some shit, like drug gummies, you know. But whatever.
But we digress. All right.
If you're out there, homie, I forgive you.
I
Don't fret, King.
guess I forgive you for taking our seats.
He's really right next to him. Yeah, that's a huge digression. But is there anything you want to mention before we start jumping to spoiler zone?
No, I think we're ready for spoilers because everything that I have in my notes is spoiler central,
Yes.
and I am very excited to just dive into it. And I hope you all love Suzume as much as we did.
忘れられるわけない。絶対に助けに行く。
あいつは自分の扱いが雑なんだよ。
あんたはなんか。
Alright, so we're back from spoilers, and I think the first thing I want to talk about is a little more detail on the threat and the danger. They call it a worm.
Yes.
The worm turns, and,
Yes.
and the world shakes, basically.
So I was reading an interview that this is kind of based off like, and I'm not familiar with this legend, so forgive me, but it's like an actual Japanese folkloric mythological being that there's this giant worm that like creates earthquakes, and that's the premise for this movie, is that every time a door is opened, the door is actually a gate to the what is called the ever after. And the ever after is this kind of space where
It's like the afterlife mixed with like all time, like prescient time.
there is no specific set time. It is just time as it has always been and always will be.
Which is interesting to think that maybe it might not even be the afterlife. It's just that people who die are there because everything's there.
Yeah.
So
Although you don't see any of them when they're there.
True, because you technically don't ever even see her mother.
Yes.
Spoilers. Spoilers.
Spoilers. Well, we're in the spoiler section,
Yes.
so yeah. But so like we kind of mentioned it at the pre-spoiler section. Suzume starts with the titular Suzume, 17-year-old girl, junior in high school. She is actually living with her maternal aunt, Tamaki, who's around like 40 or so. I don't know why I'm remembering all these ages. I should stop that. But
And she's fine.
yeah.
Fine 40-year-old.
Fine aunt. So she is getting ready to go to school for the day, and they break to see her unlocking her bike chain, locking the front door, and
Close-ups on
close
turning.
up on turning all the locks. And as she's biking to school, she runs into Sota, and he's like, "Hey, are there any like ruined, rundown places around here?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, that place over there." Thinks nothing of it, goes to school.
She thought he was a YouTuber who was going to film in
Yeah.
abandoned buildings.
Yeah, she's like, "Oh, he just likes spooky stuff. It's fine, like haunted houses, whatever."
You won't believe the crack needles I found in here.
This guy looks like a drifter. He's up to shifty stuff. Whatever, it's fine. And so she goes to school, and then halfway through the day, Suzume sees this like giant red vortex thing coming out of the hills where these ruins are. And no one else in her class, like her friends that she's sitting with, can see this. But it looks like a giant red tornado like spun out of the hills.
Wait a second. Did she go to the gate first? Didn't she? Didn't that come because she took the keystone out?
You're right, I'm wrong. I'm sorry. Rip.
Video evidence.
No! You're right, she does. She follows Sota before school. That's right, because she stopped at the tree. Okay.
Yeah, so
back it up.
So she finds the gate to the other side.
Yes. She thought that Sota was shifty enough that she stopped at the train tracks, and her friend's like, "What's up?" And she's like, "Oh, I forgot something." And then goes to the ruins, doesn't see Sota, but sees this door in a giant puddle of water. It's like, "What's this?" But it's like closed and nothing's going on. And then she opens the door and sees the Ever After, runs through the door because it looks familiar to her and she's interested. But when she runs through the door, she just ends up on the other side. She sees the Ever After, she runs through,
she can't actually
but she can't get
breach
into
the
it.
barrier.
Yeah.
It's like imagine like a transparent
Yeah.
like window or something that you walk through it, but like then you're just seeing what's on the other side of the door.
Yeah. So like once, and like she tries to run back and forth through the door a couple times, and then she trips over what is called a keystone, and it's a little statue that is actually a cat, but Darfox turns to me and he's like, "Is that a fox?" I'm like, "No, it's a cat." And just knowing from the trailer that it's a cat, and you just wanted to be a fox because Darfox, right?
No, I literally like I had a lapse of attention in that one moment, and I was like, "Was that a fox?"
I mean, it looked like fox-like.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the little stone, when she kicks it over on accident, it goes hopping off, and she thinks nothing of it really, and it's just like, okay, well.
Even though it was the craziest thing to ever happen to
Yeah.
her, or actually,
Yeah.
actually not, but like for a normal person, it would be the craziest thing to ever happen to
Absolutely. But so she's just like, okay, well, that's life. The guy's not here. Leaves the door open and then goes to school. And
then
back to what I said before.
And then she sees a swirl.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Isn't that where that was?"
Yeah. And so she like realizes that that's generally where that door was, and freaks out. Leaves school, takes off running, and somehow makes it in time to this ruin that's pretty far away from where her school is, and sees Sota trying to slam the door closed on this like giant red worm vortex.
The worm was turning. And that's like it's pretty early in the film, right? That's like the first big set piece. Pretty simple, basically. They're trying to shut the door on this crazy whirlwind of red stuff coming out. Clearly kind of like dangerous and malicious. And she eventually starts helping him. And then they don't explain it yet, but you hear voices. And eventually they explain that part of the deal is that you have to summon forth the lock by remembering everybody who used to live there. Again, tying into kind of like the urban decay and like the remnants of the civilization that used to be there, but we've kind of just ignored.
And it's only the happy memories too, not like you don't hear any like sad, distraught voices.
Yeah, no. The movie is very positive in that sense.
Yeah.
There's a lot of scenes in the movie where it's flashing quick scenes of people living their life. And it's not like it's gonna do a quick scene of domestic violence or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's just people like, have a nice day at work. Welcome home, Mom. Help me with this. What's this? Hey, we're gonna go after the movie. It's like it's all very positive. People living their lives. It doesn't dwell on clearly the bad stuff that's happening in any big city or any civilization, right? So you hear voices, and later they explain that that's the voices of people who used to live in that area. And then he does an actual prayer, like an incantation.
Yeah.
And then like
Well, before he locks the door, though, he does get like knocked down, and his arm gets cut open.
Yeah, I don't remember. He got hurt. I don't remember.
Yeah, and then like Suzume has to help him close the door because he's like injured trying to do it like one armed.
And he's telling her, "Get away from here."
Yeah, like do you want to die or whatever?
Yeah.
And she's like, "So be it." Like, willing to throw her life away for this random thing that she doesn't know about yet.
Well, it's clear that it's a bad thing. It's clear
Yeah.
that like he needs help.
Yeah.
But he because it's kind of his job. He's like, you're a civilian, get out of here, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And she's kind of like, she's the kind of character that's like, you know, this is clearly dangerous and they need help. So she, you know, she's a lot like Deku. She could maybe be a hero.
Like,
you know?
you could be a big villain that unleashed this for all I know, but I'm gonna help you.
So yeah. After the incantation, a lock appears. It's kind of like a magical looking holographic kind of lock, and he has a physical key that he wears with like a unique, neat design. And what's the phrase they say? It's like a catchphrase. Go back or from whence you came, or let it sleep, let it lay. They say something specific.
I don't know the exact thing, yeah.
And they lock it, and it's epic, and it's just like that quells everything. And
Yes.
then all the red swirl stuff, all the worm turning in the sky, goes and it explodes into like rain.
Yeah.
Basically, it's
quelled.
quelled.
Sota doesn't explain any of what the red worm part is yet to Suzume. At that point, he just wants to move on with his life and part ways, but she's like, no, you're coming to my house, your arm is injured, I'm going to help you. And that stems from Suzume's mother being a nurse, and then she's kind of wanting to follow in her footsteps and be a nurse herself. So she's like, no, come to my house. If you won't go to a hospital, I'll at least fix you up myself.
The opening of the film is actually Suzume as an infant child walking through like decay, like messed up buildings. And then what we're led to believe is her mother finds her. And does she give her the chair then, or is that's not really seen?
I don't think they showed that at the beginning.
Yeah. So like it opens up with like clearly something bad happened to Suzume, and clearly mother is a big part of her backstory, and she's way hung up on her mom.
Yeah, and that opening scene is important to remember for the end of the movie as well, because there's a big point of mirroring in this movie too for different things, like the locks on the house door and the bike chain too.
Yeah, and this is more so than even closing that first gate. This is kind of like where the movie actually reveals what it is, because Sota sits on the chair. The chair belongs to Suzume, like we said, is a memento, and then the cat shows up.
Yeah,
and it looks emaciated. Daijin looks all emaciated, and they don't know that the cat's the keystone or whatever, and Suzume immediately wants to help the cat.
Yeah, so she goes and gets like a little tray of sardines and feeds Daijin.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, here you go, nice kitty, you're so cute, will you be my cat now? And then, like, after Daijin eats, he immediately becomes, like, fully formed, like, doesn't seem...
Like a healthy cat.
Yeah, it looks like a normal, healthy, cute, adorable kitten. And then it turns to Sota sitting on the chair and puts on the biggest Cheshire cat grin you've ever seen and says, not needed, and poof, Sota's gone. Sota becomes the chair.
Yeah.
And it's like a terrifying moment. All of a sudden, like, what did this cat just do?
And it's very much like a displacement kind of thing, because the cat was almost like the cat was testing Suzume, or like kind of scoping her out. Absolutely. And he saw that Suzume would care for the cat, so the cat was like, okay, I love Suzume, we're good. And then I forgot to say that the cat does talk. I mean, yes. I did say, like, oh yeah, I say not needed, but the cat does talk the whole time, and it's a very childish voice. Yeah. And when it spoke, both Suzume and Sota were like, huh?
Yeah.
And Sota was like, I think Sota probably suspected the cat was a keystone immediately. And that's when the cat was like you're in the way.
Yeah.
Or you know, so it's very much like a kind of weird, playful, mischievous, but also possessive thing, maybe with Suzume.
Yeah, and a lot of what Daijin says throughout the movie is like, I love you, Suzume, or keep up, or like things like that, just kind of like keeping the chase going. Yeah. In the mystery.
And that's the structure of the film. Suzume and her handsome chair are chasing after this cat across Japan. And
the aunt is terrified as to what the heck is going on. What boy is my adoptive daughter now with?
Yeah, so Suzume, or not, excuse me, Daijin the cat, there's an interesting scene early on that I guess implies some sort of like folkloric power or folkloric memory within Japan, because it shows multiple people come across Daijin as a stray, but they're like, you're Daijin. or I think we should call you Daijin. Everybody calls him the same thing.
Everybody, it like starts trending. Like they show Twitter feeds. Daijin is everywhere with everybody, like in this one town all at once.
Yeah.
And like, I think part of that is that he's everywhere just so that he knows that Suzume will see him somewhere in that area.
Yeah, and I think Daijin might mean something because one of the people they show when they're in that montage where they're naming Daijin, there's an old man who says something like, "Oh, you're fancy," or "You're something." There was like a descriptor of Daijin, and you could hear the actor say Daijin, but the dub didn't say Daijin. The dub said what the descriptor was. So Daijin might actually mean something. I'm not a
Doctor
fancy
will correct us.
Japanese lawyer.
Hime, and so the three of them are stuck on a ship overnight. Oh, actually no, I'm sorry, take it back. Daijin hops off the ship onto another ship.
Yeah.
But the two of them are stuck on this ship that's bound for Hime.
But thankfully they're going to the same destination.
Yeah. So they get there the next day. Tamaki, her aunt, is freaking out. And Suzume is like a wreck because she's wearing her school uniform still. But they're still like trying to find Daijin. And they like finally get a clue that he's at a tangerine farm. And so it turns out that they run into this girl named Chika by actually like helping her. She actually like is on this little scooter and has 2 crates of tangerines, and the top crate just like falls off. But Sota, in chair form somehow, like jumps into action and grabs a net and catches all the tangerines. And Chika's so grateful that she brings them back to her farm. Although she thinks she's just bringing Suzume back to her farm.
There's like an inn or something.
Yeah, they like run like a little ryokan. And there's like a bath and everything, and like traditional like tatami mats and the sliding doors and everything. It's very much like a traditional home/inn that they live in on this farm. But so like it's a cute little bonding moment for Suzume and a good like moment of like respite and quiet at the same time. But the next day, I think it was the next day, or maybe it was the same day, for the next worm appears.
Yeah, there's never too far from a worm appearing. The movie
Yes.
keeps the pace up pretty well, where she arrives somewhere, she meets somebody, she kind of figures out what their deal is. They're pretty charming, and then oh shit, worm time.
Yeah.
And then they gotta go run it and get it. And there's a couple times where they disrupt that kind of setup, but that's pretty much the structure of the film. Where was this a amusement park worm?
No, this is the middle school worm.
The middle school.
Because it
worm?
was Chika's middle school.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, the mudslide stuff. Yeah.
Which actually, realizing that afterwards, like after Chika, we don't know it's Chika's middle school until after the worm has been resolved. But I wonder if one of the voices that Suzume heard when she was locking the door was Chika's.
Probably, yeah.
Just like a later door, I think she hears her mother as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I digress. So yeah, they go into this like abandoned middle school area where the next worm has appeared, but Sota, who's now a chair, can't close the door, so it's got to be Suzume who's got to do it. Or, as we now learn, the giant worms cause giant earthquakes, and if she doesn't close the door, then a giant earthquake will strike Japan. And that one's not as bad as a later one to come, but it still would have been like traumatic to that area.
Eventually, they explained that the worm was the cause of the big Kanto earthquake from like 1920 or 1930 or something like that.
Not that one, the Tokyo one.
Yeah, but it's the same worm, right? Isn't it?
Yeah, it's the same worm. Yeah.
Yeah, like so.
It just has a bigger door coming out of Tokyo.
Yeah, so they eventually explained that like the famous natural disaster that just really just messed up Kanto was it's all this stuff, like those are the stakes, you know.
Yeah.
So she says goodbye to Chika, and she gets a new set of clothes.
Yeah, fresh set of clothes.
It's like a video.
And a bag to hide Sota in.
It's like a video game. It's like she gets something off of all of these people she meets.
Yeah.
On her quest. And you know, Chico seems really cool, really charming. It's instant besties kind of
Crying
vibe.
as they say goodbye,
Yeah,
hugging.
instant besties. And then she goes off and she comes across the best character in the movie, Rumi.
Ruby.
Yeah.
And her two hellish children. I'm not a child fan, so just putting that out there.
Yeah. So basically, like, she's hitchhiking, and then the only person to help her out is this mom. She's like, "Oh my god, I can't leave this young girl on the road." So
What a coincidence! You're going to the same town I am. Let's go.
Yeah. So like, she takes her to the town, and she's like, "Whoa, can you babysit for me?" So she has to babysit the kids, and the kids are kind of a big pain.
Well, you can't forget they stopped at McDonald's and saw the amusement park abandoned in the distance first.
Oh yeah.
Gotta sit and eat your.
Actually,
McKees.
that was a great scene actually, because the mom was like snapping at the kids, being like, "Don't spill anything this time," and of course the kids don't care. They're they're putting their cups at the edge of the chair, and the
Because
chair being
Sota's like sitting in between the two
Yeah.
children in the back seat.
the chair being Sota, like, does these micro adjustments to like
Yeah.
so the
So
cups
the
don't tip
food don't
forward,
fall.
and the kids were like, "What?" And so they start like pushing
Germs.
stuff and trying to make stuff fall.
Like stacking things up.
It's pretty funny, and Sota's like a champ doing like these micro
Yeah.
just like trying to keep stuff from like terrible disaster of all this McDonald's stuff on the car floor. And there's a lot of good stuff with Sota chair or Cherta, where like Cherta basically reviews himself to the kid as like he starts moving around to like make the kids pay attention, and Suzume has to like make up all these excuses like, it's an AI
robot.
It's an AI toy.
And then he starts talking or something because like he has to say something quickly to Suzume, but he didn't mean to talk. He just like blurted out. He's like, "Yeah, he talks, but he's not very smart." And he's like, "Wait, what?" Such a cute moment.
Yeah, and that's when you come across the bar, which we talked about in the knock party section. Very good vibe. Was the older woman also her daughter? Because I think she's kind of her mother.
They didn't specify who the relationship of the older woman, but I got the feeling that she was just like a close, like long-term employee.
I think she was kind of her mother, but maybe that's like a boss kind of thing, like a
Maybe.
or like a mother bar owner, kind of like a weird.
They were
weird
all
thing.
kind of like very close, hanging out at the end of the night.
Yeah.
So Bar Harbor.
So she eventually, again, she has to boat when she sees a red swirls in the sky.
Mid-shift because she has to work at the bar now.
Yeah. She goes to the amusement park, and this is the first time you start to get kind of hints at like her backstory, being involved with the Ever After. Yeah, because she sees the Ever After to the gate, and she starts walking through it, and she thinks she's walked through it, but she's actually kind of like seeing it, but she's still physically in our world.
So the big thing to note about this particular gate though is, other than it's in an amusement park, it's actually on the door of a cart for the Ferris wheel.
Yeah.
And Daijin actually hits this power switch at some point, and the amusement park turns on all of a sudden while him and Sota are like running around on a roller coaster trying to catch each other. Or the track, not on an actual cart. But so when Suzume is like trying to walk through the worm to get to the Ever After because she's like caught in this trance, she doesn't realize that she's about to walk through the other side of this Ferris wheel car and plummet to her death because the Ferris wheel is moving. Mm-hmm. And it's Sota's voice reaching out to her and connecting to her that pulls her back in and stops her from plunging to her death.
Right, yeah.
And then Daijin just takes off.
And you know, same deal. They managed to close it, but they have a moment because when they close it, they're at the top of the Ferris wheel, so they kind of have to wait for the Ferris wheel to come down. Yeah. So they chat there for a minute. I forget what they chat about, but
and suspiciously enough, like it shows people being like, "Oh, the amusement park's on," or like whatever, but
yes.
Nobody goes to investigate like at all.
Yeah, they just see the park light turn on in the distance, and they're like, "Neat, cool." It's just,
That's wild. I haven't seen that on in years.
And I'm surprised like the power came on because like theoretically somebody was paying those bills.
Yeah.
So this movie sucks.
Movie magic, okay.
This movie sucks. All these
No, take it back.
plot holes in
Take
these
it back.
movies. Cinema sins.
It's on the grid, okay? City pays for it.
Oh, free real estate. Yeah.
Gotta be able to sell it.
So where does she go from here? Is this where Sota takes her to
his apartment
Tokyo?
in Tokyo. Yeah. So he's like, we gotta go to Tokyo next, but there's somewhere I need to stop first. And so he has Suzume go to this little konbini convenience store in like the first floor of his apartment building, and they give her a key, and she's like, oh yeah, I'm his cousin or whatever. And they go up to his apartment, and he has these ledgers of like the legacy of the closers, basically telling the story of the Great Worm, talking about the great earthquake from 1923 that hit Tokyo, and really like these gorgeous illustrations of all the like mythological folklore around the Great Worm.
Right.
And so she learns a lot more, and then she also learns that it's kind of like a legacy thing throughout his family. And then he also has a sick grandfather in the hospital.
Yeah, he has a mention because he asked a question, and he's like, actually, I don't know. I'd have to converse with my grandfather about this because this is something that we haven't come across. So that's seeded for later in the film because we do eventually meet the grandfather.
Yes.
But then we meet
Serizawa.
Serizawa. Yeah.
Yeah, Serizawa just like starts pounding on the door, and he's like, I know you're in there, man, come out. So Serizawa is Sota's friend, who's also an education major, and he's like, why did Sota miss his exam yesterday to become a teacher? What's going on?
Uh-huh.
And so I guess because Suzume left the door unlocked, he let himself in and realized that it's not Sota that's in the room. And starts talking to Suzume, doesn't really buy her like family member story, but is still like nice to her. Mm-hmm. And like as they're talking, she sees a great worm start reaching up in the background across Tokyo, and like bolts out to the balcony and just takes off. And so we take a little break from Serizawa because she's got a much bigger, more important mission ahead now.
And this set piece was actually like a little bit different, a little more dynamic because the worm was coming out of like a train tunnel, so it was like deeper underground. And this is where it's
not a simple door to just close.
Yeah, and this is where she jumps off of the bridge, right?
Yeah, she jumps off of the bridge onto the worm, but because Daijin is running up the worm and Sota's chasing Daijin, and then like Suzume goes after both of them and jumps onto the worm, but the worm's not stable, and so Sota Cherta has to try to catch her somehow and explain that it's not stable.
Yeah, like basically she kind of phases through the worm. The chair, probably because it's cursed or magical or lighter, it doesn't go through. So like as long as she's kind of with the chair, it's not really explained well, but like it's visually kind of makes sense. She can stand on the worm, but if she's away from the chair, she fall like free fall and die.
Yeah. So they finally catch up to Daijin, and they're like, you need to turn back into a keystone and turn me back into a human, or this is going to kill tons of people. And like Daijin makes this really sinister face and says like hundreds of people are about to die, and is like super happy about it. And then you like, I feel like that's like the most sinister moment you feel for Daijin. You're like, oh, this is such a villainous cat, I hate him so much. But like I never want to say that about a cat. And so then Daijin turns to Sota and he's like, don't you already see? You are the keystone. And there's no other way to quell this giant worm because there's no simple gate. And so Sota acknowledges that he has to become the keystone at that point. And like actually it was something we didn't mention as we were going along. Sota has a hard time waking up in the mornings because he's in this like other plane while he's a chair, and is kind of like freezing and becoming the Keystone throughout, but you don't quite know that until much later in the film.
It kind of feels like what do they call it? The the dark place in Get Out, when they get hypnotized and then they kind of fall, the sunken place. Kind of feel like the sunken place because their bodies are represented as like, and consciousness are represented kind of like in the surface of water, and they fall underneath. And at the bottom, there's kind of like their deep psyche. And the movie does it pretty subtly, where like at first he just kind of takes a while to wake up, and it's kind of like a gag.
Yeah.
But then
like Chica makes a joke like, "Oh, why don't you just like kiss him to wake up?" Because she's like, "What if there's somebody that you want to wake up? They can't."
Yeah.
So and that's like the most like contact that they have with each other.
Yeah. But then one time you see what's actually happening when he's sleeping is that he's kind of
like on a chair, or he's on the chair on like a beach in front of a door that's in the ocean.
Just like Death Stranding.
Yeah.
And then he's kind of calcifying, almost like he's becoming part of the scenery.
There's like crystals going up over his body and everything.
Yeah. So there's clearly something wrong happening with him. So when she says he's a Keystone, it makes total sense. It's kind of obvious. Yeah. And it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Like the Daijin switched it on him.
Yeah, they're like, become a Keystone. He's like, can't.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's already kind of like big stakes for the plot, because now you know the only way to stop this, or probably the only way to stop this, is to sacrifice one of the main characters and make them...
Yeah. Which they did allude to, actually. Typical to anime, they showed the red spider lilies, and I'm like, who's gonna die? Who is gonna die? Because, like, that's it. As soon as you see those flowers, it's over.
Those are the red ones that are kind of like that?
Yeah. Like, they, like, sprout up around.
Okay. Yeah.
Terrifying. You know somebody's gonna die every time you see those flowers.
That's in the first opening of Inuyasha. Or first ending.
It's in, like, every opening of Demon Slayer. Just so you know. So,
does she stick him in the ground then, or no?
Not in the ground. So she runs up to the top of the worm, and she's bawling her eyes out, doesn't want to do it, but at his request, she slams the chair down in the top of the worm, and he becomes the Keystone. The worm recedes at that point.
Because this was going to be the big one.
Yeah, just before it fell. Like, it was going to kill millions of people if it fell.
Yeah. This was, like, they make it obvious this was going to be just, like, the biggest, like, earthquake disaster in, like, modern history.
Yeah. The way that the worms work, you have, from the time they go up and breach until they smack down on the ground. When it hits the ground, that's when the earthquake happens. So it's a very, like, time-sensitive thing to close the door on these worms. The worm. And
so much of this worm came out. I think this is the one where, like...
It was falling already.
It was like almost like a canopy.
Yeah.
Covering, like, a huge part of Tokyo.
Yeah.
So it was just going to be a gigantic epicenter. Like, it was just going to be, like, total nutso, like, disaster.
And when the worms go away, instead it just becomes rain. Like, once the door is closed on them.
Yeah. So she sacrificed Cherta to save millions of people, probably even trade. And then...
I don't know. People are awful.
And then, what are these people? We heard their voices.
Okay,
They're just going to work, coming home from work, going to school, coming home from school.
Living their lives, but I like Sota, so...
Yeah. So... From there, I actually didn't know what was the deal with where they were. She was, like, underground, and there was, like, a...
Yeah, she came out of, like, this... Well, okay,
was it like a quarry or something?
It was this, like, kind of underground cavern within the subway system.
Yeah.
And she worked her way back up and walked along the rail until she got into some civilization.
It was one of the ones that almost didn't follow the pattern of urban decay, except I think the underground section, I think it was dug out by humans, because it had kind of like a quarry structure where it looked like it was dug through, sort of. There was mining or so. I'm not exactly sure what it was. I like to this day, I still don't know what exactly the deal with that was. Yeah. Oh, it looked interesting and it was different. So yeah, she came back out, and where did she go from there?
Well, before she came out, there was a really big moment. So while she was still down in this kind of cavern, and she's like closing the big double doors and locking them, Daijin appears. And she starts screaming at Daijin. And just like, give me Sota back, why did you do this? Like, freaking out. And he's like, I love you, Suzume. Don't you love me? Don't you love me? Please tell me you love me. And she's like, I hate, and then she doesn't say I hate you, but she stops herself just at I hate. And that's the moment that I like really wanted to cry, because I actually like felt bad, because you just see Daijin go from that healthy cat to that shriveled, emaciated cat that he was at the very beginning.
Yeah.
And I like, my heart was just like torn because cats. I just like wanted to start crying right then.
I like how Daijin, essentially the villain of the movie, is the one I almost made you cry.
Yes, because like, well, first of all, and we'll get into it, Daijin isn't really per se the villain.
No.
Or a villain. There isn't like a clear villain besides like the worm is a problem. But like I was so conflicted in that moment because like I felt so bad for this little cat, but I also was so angry at him for taking Soda away.
Yeah.
But I was so distraught about it, and like hearing her actually say like I hate you to a cat and like throwing the cat like down in the water, like that was just like heart-wrenching to me.
Well, she had the cat up and she was kind of manhandling the cat.
Yeah, it's like that hurts.
And then she was about to like just dunk the cat and like,
Yeah.
kill the cat, but then she just kind of like lets the cat drop.
Yeah.
So she didn't exactly like football.
She definitely is like defeated and like gives up and like, or not so much gives up, but like recognizes that Daijin's not going to do anything else for her at that moment. But so Daijin becomes this like scruffy, emaciated cat again, but doesn't run away. Instead, goes silent and follows Suzume.
And Suzume goes to the grandfather now.
Yes. So at that point, Suzume, who has like lost her shoes, is covered in mud, is like her shirt's all torn up, is super disheveled and defeated and depressed over losing Sota, goes because she remembers that he has a grandfather that knows more about all this, to the hospital, takes like bus. People are like talking about like, oh, look at this girl like the whole time. And
That part was weird to me. That part was like, leave her alone.
Yeah, like,
you don't know what her.
you don't know her story, man.
If you're that concerned, to go ask her if she needs help. You
Yeah.
know, it's like that part was like the only negative part of like.
Yeah, like nobody tried to help at all.
Yeah.
Like, there was two, like Chika and Rumi were so helpful early in the film that it was like such a contrast in the city that they were like so like rude to her. But either way, she shows up at Hitsujiro's hospital room. He's like barely hanging on to his respirator or whatever it is that he's hooked up to.
Yeah, he's not healthy.
But the first thing out of his mouth when she walks in the room is, so Soda failed his mission or whatever.
Yeah, he comes off as a very kind of like cold family member, but you also get the person that he's caring and he's just kind of for the cause kind of thing.
Yeah, and he very much is telling Suzume like he served his mission. There's nothing else you can do. Like he's doing an honorable thing. How dare you take that from him or whatever if you're trying to bring him back somehow.
Right.
But then he realizes she's seen the ever after and she's been in the ever after. And his tune just completely 180s. He's like, you know what? You can save Soda after all. You can go through one door, and it's the door you've already been through in your life.
Yeah, it turns out everybody has that capability, but like
Yeah.
it's like the lottery. Like, how could you possibly find that one door that exists
Yeah.
that you can go through? And she did when she was young. So that's basically what made her special.
Yeah.
She's capable, or irrecoverable, but she's one of the people who found that door, and
Yeah.
that door is like way far away.
Yeah, it's more in like the northern section of Japan. I don't know if it's quite on like the Hokkaido island or if it's just below. It looked like they didn't have to cross another island.
I don't think they crossed any
Yeah.
water.
So at that point, she leaves the hospital feeling like, yeah, I've got a mission. I got to get back to my hometown where I lost my mom and see this like horrible destroyed town. And she bumps into Serizawa, who's sitting out front with his little sports car. And he's like, hey, Suzume, quick thing. What's going on? You look like a mess. Also, where's Sota? Because I still want to find him. And then all of a sudden, Aunt Tamaki, who's been like tracking Suzume this whole time thanks to her coworker saying, hey, look at her bank statements and you can find her. because she doesn't have like phone GPS or whatever. Doesn't stalk her family like the rest of us. And so Tamaki's like freaking out, like, is this the boy that you've been running away with? And like Serizawa's like, I don't know what's going on, but can we go?
Do you get the vibe that Serizawa was gay?
I didn't actually
and
thought
maybe gay for Sota?
No, I didn't actually get that vibe. I mean, I'm okay with that, but like I got the vibe that Serizawa actually kind of liked Tamaki to an extent.
I mean, I was thinking that too as well, but for some reason the line where, because there's a recurring joke where he's saying that Sota owes him money and that's why he's helping out just to get his money back.
Turns out
Serizawa
owes the 20,000 yen.
Yeah. Which just kind of lent this thing of like Serizawa's like just finding excuses to be near Sota and or look after Sota. So that just put it in my mind that like, oh, maybe he's gay.
I mean, maybe. Be cool. The what should we call it? But so the three of them end up in Serizawa's car, going on this road trip to her hometown, and Tamaki's like putting up a fight or whatever like the whole time. But then Suzume just like passes out from exhaustion in the back seat. And Tamaki is trying to convince Serizawa to just like turn around and go back to Tokyo. They're like, oh, if you go to Tokyo, she'll give up. Like, she'll quit this silly mission she's on, whatever that is.
This is a good example of the difference between this and something like Your Name, because this section of the movie is equivalent to when, spoiler for Your Name, when Your Name McGee finds out that Your Name Jane is actually already dead.
Do you not remember their names? It's Taki and Mitsuha, first of all.
I love Takis. So
not the chips.
So it's a very sad part of the film, and it's kind of a slog and depressing because he starts looking up registries of people who live in the town.
Yeah.
And his co-worker, I think, the waitress lady, and somebody else. So somebody else is with him, and other human beings.
And I need to rewatch Your Name.
and they're like, damn, this boy's depressed, but let's help him out.
This is very much that moment.
It's that moment, but it's actually a lot of fun because they're on a road trip.
Well, like Serizawa is like playing these like bopping tunes the whole time and singing along in the car, very much like I would do, just like. And Tamaki's like, can you not? And he's like, no, we're on a car trip. This is the perfect time. This playlist is catered to my guests.
There was a kind of inappropriate but funny moment when he starts playing a song about, don't fight for me. Like two women loving one man or something like that.
When they're like at the heat of fighting with each other. And it's like, don't fight over me, guys. Love me.
Yeah.
The lyrics are on point.
Yeah. Not that there isn't darkness in that section, because I think you're getting to it. There is we skipped over a minor reveal where apparently the grandpa knew the Keystone. They had a relationship in the past.
Yes.
Daijin, because when Suzume leaves the grandpa, like, now I have a mission. Now I know I need to go to my hometown or whatever.
Yeah.
Daijin is there.
He appears like in the hospital window, and he's like, "Hello, old friend," or something like that.
And
then it just like cuts.
We don't know what the relationship is if
at all.
Daijin used to be human and they became a Keystone, or if they just had run-ins in the past and stuff like that. Like maybe Grandpa had his own adventure of Daijin running off and he gets to get him back or whatever. But like, you meet in a kind of out of nowhere scene, you meet the other Keystone.
Yes, there's a second Keystone, and the other Keystone is another cat named Sadaijin, and that cat it's a black cat, and it's significantly bigger, but it appears in such a dramatic, terrifying way.
Yeah, basically, the aunt is kind of placating Suzume, going on this road trip. Because she knows Suzume is kind of like the vulnerable state, and so she doesn't want to just literally drag her to Tokyo. She's like, okay, fine, let's do this thing, because I'm your aunt, I love you, whatever. But she really doesn't want to do it. She really thinks it's wrong. She's placating her.
She knows that Suzume will just run away if she says no and tries to force her back.
Yeah, so they have this scene where it's just a really nasty blow up where basically
the aunt just like snaps all of a sudden, like At first she's like pleading with her, like, yeah, please, let's just give this up and go home. But then all of a sudden she's like, there's like a twist of her lip and it becomes sinister. And it's like she's saying things that she would never have said before.
But are also kind of true.
Yes.
It's the deal is that like it's her true feelings, but they're too hurtful, and like an actual loving person wouldn't express them in this way, and they wouldn't just lash out. But it's an interesting catalyst because she confronts her again about what's going on here. And Suzume basically doesn't want to talk about any of the supernatural stuff. She's like, I'm not going to explain to you the birds and the bees on. Like
There's too many things going on for me to tell you.
And that basically pisses off the Eon. That's like the Starter Bros kind of like, oh, you're not going to tell me anything after we're doing all this for you. You're being extremely unreasonable. Yeah. And she's right. She's right that she is, but like you see both sides of it, right? And that's kind of what kind of leads her down the path. And after the aunt tears into her and says that like, you ruined my life, which is something they touched upon because Suzume is very aware of the fact that like her aunt missed out on her like 20s and 30s
like,
because
being able to settle down and have her own children kind of thing.
And the aunt like basically says that, but in a way angrier way. She's like, who'd want somebody who has a kid, has to take care of a kid, could never have people over. You ruined me.
Despite the fact that her coworker is clearly pining for her the whole movie.
Yeah, I respect the guy. He's scruffy as hell. Like
he's trying.
Like he's not. He's not in the league. He really. The poor guy isn't. But yeah, hey, you know.
He's like, I'll hop on a flight right now for you.
Yeah. I thought that was funny because that's completely unresolved in the movie, right? Yeah. It's just something that's in the background. They didn't really need to explore it more, but like it makes a lot of sense. It's pretty cute.
Yeah.
I don't think she's gonna end up with him.
No. Maybe Sorozawa.
Maybe Sorozawa ends up with the coworker.
Oh yeah. That'd be great too.
So
I like that pairing.
So once they get into this heated exchange, and it kind of gets to this end where they're basically going to take on knives or stabbing each other. When it gets that angry,
Suzume's like, "Who are you?"
Yeah, Suzume realizes like this is too much. Like my aunt wouldn't say this to me. Not this way.
Not that she doesn't believe that her aunt feels that way deep down, but that her aunt would never say that specifically. And at that point, she smiles again, and Sadaijin comes out, and then her aunt just like collapses on the ground.
And that scene was very good and very effective, and it worked really good for the characters, so I'm okay with it. But I did feel that scene was kind of out of nowhere. It's not like they set up a whole like emotional manipulation thing about this movie.
It's definitely like a sudden plot twist.
Yeah. It kind of came out of nowhere, and it didn't like the whole idea of Sadaijin possessing people or making people's emotions come out is never visited again. It's not like a thing about the character for some reason.
Yeah, like at that point, like Sadaijin just starts hanging out with them, which by the way, the whole time Daijin is like curled up on the seat in the backseat of Serizawa's car and is just like sleeping, not talking the whole time.
Kind of not pouting, but like almost like a kid who's in timeout.
Yeah, like withdrawn.
Yeah. It's like they at this point they basically know that they want to help Suzume, but they know Suzume doesn't want his help, kind of thing. So they're just gonna stick around until they can actually help.
Yeah, like Suzume pieces together that Daijin actually led her and Sota to all the places where the worm was appearing, and was actually trying to be somewhat helpful through the whole thing.
In his own weird way.
Yeah.
So now they got an extra cat coming along, and
two cats, and then so they get like 20 kilometers away from her hometown.
How many birds were flying outside?
Too many. And so all of a sudden they're like talking about something. I don't remember what it was. And before we get to that, Serizawa's car has issues. It's a used car. It starts raining at one point when they're on the highway, and it's a convertible. So he tries to this is a little humor moment in the movie. He tries to put the hood over, and you can tell that something's not gonna work out right with this, and it gets a foot away from closing all the way and just stops.
Yeah,
which is what prompted them to stop at that bus station for the blow up, but.
It's a good scene because they show the car it's convertible and it's flashy.
Yeah.
but then he says like, I got it really cheap. It's like, it's great.
Yeah,
So like it's clearly just run down. It's not like
Yeah.
a good condition. That's why he got it cheap. And when he starts putting the top on, like his reaction is great. Like, okay, well, I guess let's
It's
try
gonna be
it.
fine.
Yeah,
Yeah, sure, I'll put the hood on.
let's try it. And he's like, it's still broken. It's, he's just
Yeah.
like, you can tell he's tried it a couple times and it won't work. He can't get it fixed
Yeah.
because it probably costs a lot of money to do that.
Yeah. Which
So
actually, sorry, I also forgot. Before they leave this like bus station or rest area that they stopped at with the blow up, the aunt like gets up after Sadaijin's done talking, like just doesn't say anything to Suzume, runs, like bolts inside and like goes crying to Serizawa and like knocks his ice cream, and like all the strangers are like staring at them like, what is wrong? Like, did you abuse her or whatever? Like,
Yeah.
and she's just like, what do? I said such horrible things. But anyway, so then Tamaki is sleeping instead of Suzume the rest of the way, and they get 20 kilometers away from the hometown, and all of a sudden something happens and they have to like veer in the traffic real quick, and Serizawa's car ends up going like right on the edge and then tilting down the little curb and
Into
making a
ditch.
little like
Yeah.
diagonal thing, and the airbags pop off, and then the hood goes the rest of the way
Yeah.
down.
Yeah, the convertible hood actually closes this time. So
Yeah.
it's a good guy. And then he goes, oh, it worked.
Yeah. Just like, oh, it works now, it's fine.
Yeah.
I think Serizawa has like the best good natured, like chill dude vibes throughout that whole like encounter.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Suzume's not one to give up, and she's so close to her destination. So she just starts booking it. And Daijin starts like chasing after her, and then Sadaijin behind them. And the aunt's like, I give up. I'm gonna do what I can and be the best guardian I can, whatever this needs to just end. And catches up to Suzume, and they end up like riding on the bike together. And she's like, so are you gonna tell me what's the deal with these cats? And she's like, oh, yeah, they're gods. Just like, what? Okay. And just accepts it. And then she's like, I hope you know that, like, while I sometimes do feel those things I said, like, I still care about you so much, and like really kind of apologizes without apologizing. And Suzume's like, I know, and I understand, and I'm also sorry for what I said, and blah, blah, blah.
Suzume didn't say much, really. Suzume was like,
Yeah.
you're suffocating me, which is kind of like it's a stupid thing that a kid might say, but like...
But it still hurts.
Yeah, the aunt was... But the aunt, like, took out the shotgun and blew her face off,
Yeah.
kind of thing. So this is pretty much, like, near the very end of the movie. And she finds the home.
Yeah, where her and her mom grew up, and you see like a flashback of her mom making the chair that
Yeah.
becomes Cherta.
Yeah.
Now you got me saying it. So you get to see like how the chair is constructed, because her mom was really into woodworking, and Suzume's like, can you give it eyes? It needs a face, like the little child Suzume. And so you get to see that like little whole interaction and everything. And then it cuts back to Suzume digging up this like little box of Suzume's treasures from when she's a kid.
Like a time capsule, basically.
Yeah, that's like buried in the like outer edges of this house that is no more. It's just like the like stone basin of the house.
It got flooded. It got swiped away by tsunami.
I didn't get to see. Yeah, that's right. Because that was actually, so we forgot to mention that the incident that her mother passed away in, and why that whole house and town is destroyed, is because of the 2011 earthquake and tsunami that happened in Japan, like a real event. But anyway, so I don't know how much you like saw in that time capsule when she opened it, but the first thing I noticed in the bottom right corner was a Tamagotchi.
No, I didn't understand.
I was like, yes, perfect child like investment there. It's in good condition after all those years and flood.
So she has a diary in there, right?
Yes,
and the diary.
that's what she's after.
And the diary has like a it's like the classic kids Japanese diaries, where it has a section on top for you to draw, and then it has a section in the bottom for you to write what happened. So she's kind of like looking for evidence
Like,
about the...
Mom built me a chair.
Yes.
And then like obviously the horrible thing happens to her mom or whatever, and then it's just 10 or so at least pages of just blacked out the whole page.
Yeah, she like redacted the whole page, which is really sad because you see her doing that in a couple of flashbacks during the movie, and you don't really have the full context of what the kid is doing.
Yeah, you just see like the blacked out pages.
But now you know that she basically blacked out the tsunami and her mom dying.
Yeah.
You know,
her trauma and depression are those 10 black pages.
Yeah.
And
at the end of it
yeah.
is a door.
Yes.
She actually drew the door.
She drew the door with her mom and the chair and little stars to represent the ever after.
Yeah.
On that last page.
Very convenient. Kid knew to draw all the details.
Kid, you nailed it. Fridge picture if I ever saw one.
So they were like, okay, that's actually some corroborative evidence, right, for the door actually being here.
Yes.
But then like the aunt was like, this was so long ago.
Like the door's not going to be around.
Yeah. Because it's all like debris and rubble,
it's
but
flat.
some of it has been cleaned up, some of it hasn't. But she finds the door. It's just kind of like somewhere else.
Actually found it. Like I think he actually like called to her or something.
I don't remember. But it's like
they found it.
It's like basically knocked over, and she has to stand it up.
Yeah.
And she goes to the door and goes to the ever after. And
yeah,
I think Tamaki's watching, right? Her aunt.
She like leans the door against the edge of this thing, and or like an edge of a housing development or something, what used to be, and opens the door, and she sees the ever after and like everything below, and the two cats are right behind her, and her aunt is like back by the house, and she's like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "I'm sorry, I gotta go," and just jumps through the door into the ever after, and the cats follow.
And that was like the mom's big, like the aunt's big. They're like, okay, there is something we're going on here.
Yeah, she's like, that is an empty. There's grass. Where did you jump to?
Yeah, she saw her port basically.
Yeah. So there's no like denying what the heck is going on at that point for the aunt.
But it's not that really important to the story, anyways.
Yeah.
It all transitions over to the ever after, and
yeah.
I actually talked to Amber about this yesterday when we watched the movie. There's a scene where Saiyajin, is that the other one? Saiyajin has like a wrestling match with the worm.
Yeah, like as soon as they jump through the portal, Sadaijin turns into this giant cat beast and is like white now all of a sudden. But
well, they inverted their colors.
Yeah.
When Daijin is small, he's white, and when he's big, he's black.
Yeah.
And Saiyajin is the opposite. When he's big, he's white. When he's small, by small I mean like human size. He's
like
a lot bigger.
Little, like yin yang effect there.
Yeah. I think that's intentional. To see when they were wrestling, and I thought that scene wasn't well animated. It's not like it looked bad, but it kind of looked like a regular anime episode, and it stood out to me just because like I would have imagined that would have looked way better in one of these films. But maybe that's just me. It really is nitpicking because
I didn't really notice it, to be honest.
The scene looked fine. It just kind of looked like a regular anime episode.
Yeah. So, I mean, while Sadaijin and the Great Worm are, like, fighting each other in the background, poorly animated, as Darfox says.
Like garbage.
The ground, which is not poorly animated, is, like, torn up, destroyed buildings in flames. But you see way out in the distance, on the top of a hill that's all, like, icy, kind of mountainish in a way, is Cherta, frozen into the top of it, and Suzume is like trying to make her way through the fire with Daijin to Sota.
Through the fire.
I don't know what that is supposed to be.
The fire? I forget what it's
You mean like the Billy Joel? Not Billy Joel.
Not really, no. It's the old R&B song.
Oh, okay, I don't know what you're
The
talking
one
about.
that's sampled by Kanye with Through the Wire.
Don't know that one.
We're like the same age, right? Okay, so...
Anyways, makes it to Cherta eventually.
Oh, I'm sorry. One thing I wanted to mention is that I think here where they show that Cherta is basically pinning down a large portion of the worm coiled up. That makes a lot of sense, especially where it kind of shows that basically the two keystones are pinning down the two ends, or they're supposed to be pinning down the two ends of the worm.
That's right. That's one thing that we forgot to mention when we were talking about what happened in Tokyo, is unlike the other doors where you just see that long kind of like red tunnel coming out like this, like out of the hill or whatever, in Tokyo it completely comes out. It like rushes out of that subway tunnel. And it becomes this like giant swirling mass in the sky that is so massive and immense and just like wrapping around. Like you'd think that it was some weird cloud system. It was so huge.
Yeah. So interesting visual. That's kind of very intuitive when you see the keystone kind of pinning it down, basically.
Yeah.
And you know, what did she do? Did she start saying, "Wake up, wake up, wake up"? Did she say,
Yeah, something to that effect. She's like wake up, Sota, or something like that. Like trying to talk to him, and I forgot how. Daijin mentions like if you pull him out, then the Great Worm will completely go out and potentially destroy Tokyo. And she's like, I don't care. He's all that like matters in my life anymore, or something like that.
Very weathering with you, kind of like let my boyfriend free, or else the world burns.
Damn the world. Let him go. And Daijin eventually like accepts this and goes like he falls into the palm of her hands and is like this tiny little disheveled dying like cat, and she looks up again for a second and he turns back into the keystone. And this is after she's already pulled Cherta out of the thing. But it turns back into the keystone and she has to put Daijin stone form back into where Cherta was to stop the Great Worm.
Did she dunk on him? She dunks him. Oh no, she dunked on him when she originally put Cherta into it. She was like, like a mid-air dunk.
Yeah, it's
back
just
in
like,
Tokyo.
well, you have to like drive it in there
Yeah.
because it's like a stake kind of at the bottom. But so as soon as she does, the Great Worm disappears back into its little hidey hole, bound down by the two keystones now.
And it seems like it goes into deeper slumber because there's like overgrowth on it.
Like
and it's smaller.
flattens. So it turns into back like at the beginning of the movie, the hills that Suzume was wandering trying to find her mom in the Ever After, and you see that sparkly sky that you've been able to see throughout the movie for the Ever After. And 17-year-old Suzume sees in the distance young child Suzume. Mm-hmm. And she's like, wait a minute, this is really familiar.
Yeah, this is like the big release of the film, basically.
Yeah.
Suzume goes over to the baby version of Suzume, and
it's like, Sota, wait over here, I'm doing something.
Yeah. and then you realize, and she realizes almost immediately, that her memory of her mother finding her and giving her the broken chair was actually her finding herself.
Yes.
And giving herself the broken chair. So a little bit of a causation loop, predestination thing happening there. Very Makoto Shinkai kind of like sci-fi idea there. But it kind of works because this is where the big sense of loss comes, because it's a little bit joyous, but it's also a little bit sad because she loses that connection with the mother, being the one who saved her.
She realizes it wasn't her mom at the beginning.
And it's very much kind of like at the same time it's self-empowering where she could save herself, but it's also, you know, she has that missing connection with her mother still. Yeah. It's not like she meets her mother. It's not the kind of ending where like her mother walks through and she's like, I always loved you, daughter, please live your life. Looks like you have a hot boyfriend now. Congrats. Bye bye. There's no direct connection with the mother. It's just her own memories, which is an interesting way to take it. And I think I liked it.
Yeah, and you see Suzume opening the door again for young Suzume to run through with the chair, and then her aunt finds her at that point. But one thing that I found out when I was reading through an interview with Makoto Shinkai, and Sota actually asked Suzume about it in the movie, is why does the chair have only 3 legs? And when you see the flashback at the earlier, before they jump into the Ever After for this like climactic scene, when you see the chair being built, obviously it still has 4 legs, and her mom is there building it and everything. When the chair gets 3 legs, that's what happens in those 10 black pages. It's when her mom dies, the earthquake and the tsunami wipe out her town. Suzume doesn't remember how it lost the 3rd leg, but when the 4th leg, I guess. But when she goes through that door, she remembers having a 3-legged chair.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a mirror moment for that the last chair, or the last leg on the chair was the piece of her mother that Suzume was holding on to. That's what she lost with that leg in the chair, and what she was holding on to the rest of it.
Yeah, a physical metaphor for the loss. Yeah, that's good.
I think well, actually, that's not the end of the movie yet. It's still not over. So they kind of like, they start airing the credits at that point, I believe it was.
Yes.
But then there's like little snippets as it goes on.
They basically,
They're catching up with
just
people.
like Death Stranding. They gotta retrace all their footsteps.
Listen, I haven't finished that game.
Spoilers. And it's actually, I love that they did this, because the whole best part of the movie was her meeting people and stuff like that. So she goes back and you see her retracing footsteps.
You see her aunt going with her and be like, "Thank you for taking care of my
Yeah.
adoptive child, my niece," and just like meeting Rumi and her children and the other bar person and Chika and her family at the ryokan, and what else? Just making her way back home, and then she has to leave Sota at a train station. And he's like, "Don't worry, I still have other doors to close, but I'll come back. I'll come back for you."
But they also, did you see they meet up with Serizawa again and they have the road trip in the opposite direction? But this time they have more fun.
I didn't see that. No, he doesn't have a car now.
No, like they duct taped the car door and everything.
Oh, okay, I missed that.
And like it shows a brief glimpse of them like all clapping along while they're
Oh, okay, no, I do remember that. I do remember that.
They're singing the wheel of the bus go around and around
Yeah.
on the way.
But so the final scene is a mirror of at the beginning, or post young Suzume, where you see Tamaki going off to work and Suzume going off to school. They lock the front door. She unlocks the bike chain and starts biking up the hill towards school. And then all of a sudden, she runs into Sota again, and he's like, "What's up?" or whatever. Like,
I think it ends with her saying, "Welcome back."
yeah, welcome back, something like that.
Yeah.
And
Which you hear a lot during the movie, during the, like, listen to the people who used to be here.
Yes.
There's a lot of, like, welcome home, welcome back. So it's kind of like they're living there, you know.
Yeah.
They're inhabiting the land.
And it's satisfying at that point, one, knowing he came back, and they're still going to be in each other's lives, whatever it does actually become or doesn't. Whether it's romantic or actually or not, because they never really show Sota's side of the feelings, just Suzume's. Is undetermined, I guess, but the hint is there. But I think really what's an important symbolic imagery throughout, whether it's the house, the bike, the doors throughout, is like the image of locks and keys and opening the door to new possibilities and new journeys and new worlds. That whole transformative element is really important to this film.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And chairs.
And chairs, yeah.
Chairs are big.
Chairs are very important.
Can you sit on a three-legged chair?
I
You
feel like
have
they
the
just always
balance.
fall.
You gotta lean in a certain way.
One other thing that I wanted to make note of as far as world building with other Shinkai films. So I won't get into the older stuff, but Your Name and Weathering with You were definitely set in the same universe. So when I saw Weathering with You, it clearly was the same universe as Your Name, because you see an adult Mitsuha and Taki. But at the end of Weathering with You, Tokyo is flooded over. In Suzume, that's not the case. So if it is in the same universe, it's pre-Weathering with You, or they just magically drained the city somehow. I don't know. I don't see that happening. No. So it either is a separate universe or pre-Weathering with You. Unlike Taki Mitsuha appearing in Weathering with You, it's not. There's no like little cameo nods like that in Suzume. In the interview with Makoto Shinkai, he mentioned that Chika's helmet in the film is like the same helmet that they wear at one point in Weathering with You, and like a news broadcast that's on TV is a recycled one from Your Name, but that's it. There's not any other hidden Easter eggs that you'd have to be on the lookout for.
Except for that one scene, if you pause and zoom
Pause. Just a real tight zoom.
in, you see the dead body
Oh my gosh.
of the main character.
Take
from
it back. Take it back.
That's the movie.
I immediately, like when I got home, I take it back. Before I got home, I was singing the soundtrack the whole way home, or just the same song over and over, not the whole soundtrack.
Yeah.
And then when I got home, I'm like, I need a figure or something, and just immediately sent Darfox this like link to a little vinyl figure of Cherta with Daijin sitting on top of it, and it was so cute, and I want it immediately. But I digress.
Okay, well, we're out of the spoiler section, and I think it's pretty obvious that we both enjoyed the film. So I think we should just basically reiterate that we both recommend it. Do you have a ranking on how you feel about it compared to
Compared to other Shinkai films?
Makoto Shinkai?
So tough. I definitely liked it more than Weathering with You, for sure, 100%.
Oof, for Weathering with You.
I was a little disappointed with Weathering with You. I mean, I still like it, but I was disappointed.
It's a garbage film. I like Weathering with You maybe more than Your Name. I'll have you know. Maybe I'm just a Your Name hater.
Maybe you're just a Your Name hater.
Yeah.
That's
a mouthful.
My only complaint, or I don't take it back. I have a couple complaints with Your Name, but I still love it so much. But that probably just because I love the lake house so much. So, you know, I think I might agree with what you said at the beginning of this video, that Suzume is top of the line for Shinkai right now.
You know what?
But Your Name's close second.
You know what? Obviously, I agree with that, but I wonder if we're on the outside of that. I wonder if most people think that Your Name is still the best and these movies are just whatever. I haven't really read any impressions or...
I haven't read reviews, to be honest, because I didn't want anything to really ruin this for me.
I guess what I'm feeling is that because this movie is a little simpler and it doesn't get as dramatic, and people are going to be like, this is boring, this is stupid. You know, it's like, where's the meteor? You know, it's like...
I think this has a wider appeal than the other audiences might have. And the main characters are more grown up than the other films as well.
This one, actually, now that you mention it, Whether You had the issue where the main boy was very much like a wet blanket kind of.
Yes.
He was like, oh, he's just kind of like a loser kid. He was endearing, but like, Suzume is a very charismatic character.
She's very independent and capable on her own.
And who cares about Your Name? But like, Suzume is a strong lead for the film in the way that, like, Whether You didn't really have that, it wasn't really about that. It was kind of about him needing to grow up and kind of like, he was a runaway, wasn't he? He was a...
For who?
Whether You?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he was a runaway. Yeah. So like, he was a kid with problems, and he needed to kind of like grow up a little bit and figure out how to deal with it. Suzume doesn't really have those issues, you know. She has trauma, but she's very strong. So I just think it's strongly constructed film.
I agree.
Anything else you want to mention, Amber, before we hop to it?
Get out there and see it right now.
Yeah,
before it's gone.
It's in theaters, so check it out.
Give Shinkai your money. See it on the big screen.
Or you can wait till it's streaming, but if you go to theaters, you might come across a pothead.
Who will steal your seat?
Smelly stupid.
Maybe I don't forget film.
I forget him. ARG Bombshell, thank you so much for letting me come to your table.
Thank you,
in your wonderful wall of manga.
Yeah.
And talk about this and record this video. If you like this video, make sure you like, subscribe, and comment on it. Let us know what you like about the movie, what you didn't like about the movie.
Give us your feedback.
Any feedback you give us, and introduction and positive reinforcement, it really warms our heart. All right, so like, comment, subscribe, do it as much as you can as far as that's concerned, and we appreciate any of that. You know, we'll do what we do. We see anime movies here and there, and we would record our little review.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're signing off for this one. Thanks for watching. Peace out.
Thank you. Bye.